This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We got a lot on our program today. I want to start out by telling you about how Santa Claus and the Republican death cult are about to drop a bomb on Joe Biden's head, politically speaking. Also, I want to get into Kurt Schrader and Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. Why are these Democrats betraying President Biden? Why? Today's rant over at HartmannReport.com is titled, Santa Claus is about to drop a bomb on Biden. And basically, here's what it lays out. The stock market's down like 500 points or something like that today. And in part, this is a reaction. Now, I realize they're saying, oh, gee, there's a company that's crashing in China. Well, that would take down the Chinese stock market. But what's happening here is that last Friday, Janet Yellen, our Treasury Secretary, came out and said, we ran out of money. The federal government ran out of money at the end of July. It is now September. And if y'all don't raise the debt ceiling pretty soon, we're going to have to start cutting back on what we spend money on. And if we reach the point where we can't even service our debt, we're talking a worldwide depression. And sure enough, on Sunday, Mitch McConnell came out and said, yep, said 0 votes, Republican votes for the debt ceiling. So on Sunday, yesterday, Yellen came out again, and this time in the Wall Street Journal, saying, quote, we would emerge from this crisis a permanently weaker nation, end quote, if the Republicans do this strategy of saying, no, we're not going to raise the debt ceiling, we're going to crash the economy. This is an actual strategy. They have been running this since 1981. In summary, here's how the strategy works. Called the Two Santa Claus Theory, and it was devised by Jude Wanniski. It was first published in the Wall Street Journal in 1974 as basically a letter to the Republican Party. Here's how you can never again lose an election. First, the Two Santa Claus Theory dictates, when Republicans control the White House, they must spend money like a drunken Santa and cut taxes to run up the U.S. debt as far and as fast as possible. This produces 3 results for Republicans when they're in the White House. First, it stimulates the economy like crazy. Reagan tripled the national debt. He took it from $800 billion to $2.5 trillion and spent all that, just spending mind-boggling amounts of money at the same time he was cutting taxes. And that stimulus actually improved the economy. And so people look back and go, hey, the economy was pretty good during Reagan. Yeah, give me a $2 trillion credit card. I'll show you what it looks like to live large. Anyhow, that's the first effect. The second is that it raises the debt, which is what the Republicans actually want. And then the third is that you add to that massive tax cuts, and the Republicans are viewed as Santa Claus. Hey, they're giving me tax money back. That's the first part of the Two Santa Claus strategy. The second part is that when a Democrat is in the White House, you completely reverse the script. Republicans need to scream bloody murder about the national debt as loudly and as frantically as they possibly can. Our children are going to have to pay for it. We have to cut spending to solve this crisis. Shut down the government, crash the stock market, damage U.S. credibility around the world if that's what's necessary to stop Democrats from spending any more money. In fact, if you can get the Democrats to even start cutting back on their own social programs that support average working people, they cease to become Santa Claus, but they become the guys who shot Santa Claus. And sure enough, they're doing it again. They're following their Two Santa Claus theory. Well, where did this come from? This came from this guy, as I said, Jude Wanniski, back in 1974. In the Wall Street Journal, he first proposed his Two Santa Claus strategy. This was back when Nixon, had resigned in disgrace, and the Republican Party was in such terrible shape that they were literally writing books about. Kevin Phillips wrote a book, basically wondering whether the Republican Party would even survive. But Wanniski came out and said, no, the reason Republicans are losing elections is not because Nixon was corrupt. That is past. The reason Republicans are losing elections is because they oppose Social Security, they oppose Medicare, they oppose unemployment insurance, they oppose food stamps, they oppose welfare, and they're not viewed as Santa Claus, they're viewed as Scrooge. And we need to change that. And then, of course, the question was, okay, how do we do that? And he said, you become the Santa Claus of tax cuts. And thus was the strategy born. Right? And it worked really well. They did, when first of all, Reagan came into office And Reagan and Bush together ran up more national debt, more debt in the United States than every administration from George Washington to Jimmy Carter combined. Combined. All the world wars, all the debt, all the spending, the Revolutionary War, the Civil, everything, all added all together, and Reagan ran up more debt than that in one term. Well, you add Bush, 12 years, actually. So, first of all, now you've got this massive debt. Now Bill Clinton comes into the White House. What do the Republicans do with it? Well, Jude Wanniski, by the way, had invented this phrase, supply-side economics, as a justification for Reagan's drunken Santa spending. And Art Laffer came up with his famous curve that said that when taxes go down, revenue to the government goes up. And so those two things were used as the kind of Potemkin village, the mask over the face, the justification for this. So then Bill Clinton comes into office. And what do the Republicans do? They scream absolutely freaking bloody murder. Clinton had been elected on the New Covenant speech, his stump speech, which promised to expand Social Security, expand Medicare, create a single-payer health care system in the United States, expand the social safety net, all kinds of really great stuff that Clinton campaigned on. And then as he was coming into office, Wanniski insider Alan Greenspan and his good buddy, Goldman Sachs co-chairman Robert Rubin, sat him down and said, Bush and Reagan left you such massive budget deficits that you're not going to be able to do your new covenant. You're not going to be able to spend more money. In fact, you're going to have to start cutting programs. And Clinton believed them. He took it to heart. He became the anti-Santa Claus. He said, the era of big government is over. It's the end of welfare as we know it. And the result was exactly what Jude Wanniski predicted. Democrats started losing elections all over the country as a result of Clinton going, shooting Santa Claus in the face. Thus, in 1999, looking at the wreckage around Bill Clinton, this last year of his presidency, next to the last year, Wanniski wrote this gloating memo that said, quote, we, of course, should be indebted to Art Laffer for all time for his curve. But as the primary political theoretician of the supply-side camp, I began arguing for the two Santa Claus theory in 1974. If the Democrats are going to play Santa Claus by promoting more spending, the Republicans can never beat them by promoting less spending. They have to promise tax cuts. Then the president of the Cato Institute, this Koch-funded think tank, Ed Crane, he noted in a memo that year, quote, when Jack Kemp, Newt Gingrich, Vin Weber, Connie Mack, and the rest discovered Jude Wanniski and Art Laffer, they thought they'd died and gone to heaven. In supply-side economics, they found a philosophy that gave them a free pass out of the debate over the proper role of government. That's why you rarely, if ever, heard Kemp or Gingrich call for spending cuts, much less the elimination of programs and departments. And that was the year, 1999, that was the year that two Santa Clauses went mainstream, when the media bought it hook, line, and sinker. And, the Republicans got what they wanted from Wanniski's work. They held power for 40 years. And they did it to Clinton. Then they did it to Obama. The exact same thing. Oh, my God, tax cuts. Oh, my God, deficits. We can't, you can't spend your way out of. And what did Obama do? He believed them, too. He said, OK, let's cut Social Security. Let's do the chain CPI. His base stopped him. But he was willing to, Obama was willing to cut Social Security because all of the pressure, because, oh, my God, the debt, oh, my God. And then in 2011, when Obama was president, the Republicans, like they're threatening to do right now, like Mitch McConnell threatened to do over the weekend, they refused to raise the debt ceiling, and the U.S. shut down the government. In fact, if you're watching the series on, I forget where it's coming from now. I'm watching it on Amazon Prime, but it's coming from someplace else about Monica Lewinsky. The whole impeachment thing. I think it's Showtime. I'm not real sure. But anyway, Louise and I have been watching. It's an amazing movie. But we're up to part 2 right now. But that was the year. Sure enough, it was during the shutdown that Monica and Bill got kind of thrown in together into the Oval Office. But anyhow, that happened again to that wasn't 2011. That was 1999. Or whichever year it was. But it happened again to President Obama. Now he didn't have Monica, but it's like it worked. And when Bush was in office before, Cheney came out right out and said it. As they were spending money and cutting taxes, he said Reagan-proof deficits don't matter. We won the midterms. This is our due. Now they're trying to drop this bomb on Joe Biden's head, and already the stock market is going soft as a result of it. And it's going to get worse. Over the next couple of weeks, you're going to hear a lot of talk about the debt ceiling. This is what's really going on.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's all about the two Santa Claus theory. Jude Wanniski has been dead for a long time, but he lives on. We'll be right back. This is just incredible. When Jude Wanniski died, I mentioned Jude Wanniski's been dead for a while. When he died, George Gilder, who is a well-known Republican and prominent Republican theoretician and activist, I'm not sure he's still around, but this was back in, I believe, the 1980s that Wanniski died, maybe the 90s. Anyhow, the Wall Street Journal published a eulogy that Gilder wrote. And Gilder gave him all the credit. He says, quote, Jude's charismatic focus on the tax on capital gains redeemed the fiscal policies of 4 administrations. Unbound by zero-sum economics, Jude forged the golden gift of a profound and passionate argument that the establishments of the mold must finally give way to the powers of the mind. He audaciously defied all the buffeteers of the trade gap, the moldy figs of the Phillips curve, the chic traders in money and principle, and even the stultifying pillows of the Nobel Prize. Yes, indeed, there were Nobel Prize winning economists who were saying, but wait a minute, this is crazy. When Reagan was campaigning back in 1980, and he adopted Wanniski and Laffer's theory. Wanniski invented supply-side economics, which said that, the historic demand-side economics of Adam Smith and David Ricardo, and, going back to Aristotle, literally, 3,000 years. Classic economics. What drives an economy? People having money in their pocket that they go into the marketplace and spend. That's what drives an economy. I mean, it was just unambiguous, right? Everybody understood this. And then Jude Wanniski comes along and says, no. What drives an economy is that there's lots of stuff on the store's shelves. Now, occasionally that's true, which is what gave him credibility. For example, when Steve Jobs invented the iPhone and invented the ultra-thin laptop, the MacBook Air, and invented tablet computers, it actually expanded the economy because there was new stuff to buy. But that's really kind of the exception to the rule. If a store doubles the amount of inventory that they have, it doesn't expand the economy unless people have money to buy it. And that's what classical economics always said, was it's money in the pockets of average working people who spend all of their money to buy whatever's out there. That's what drives the economy. And then when those people spend that money, then manufacturers have to start making more stuff to meet that demand. What the economists call aggregate demand, you and I call wages. And so then factories have to be built to meet that demand, and thus the economy grows. I mean, this is how we've understood economics for 3,000 years. As I said, literally Aristotle talked about this. But ever since 1974, Republicans have had a new idea: supply-side economics. If we send more money to rich people, if we give them giant tax cuts, they will build new factories, even if nobody has money to buy their stuff. And when they build new factories, they'll put people to work because they're job creators. How's that worked out for you, huh? I haven't seen any evidence of it working anywhere. If you strip away enough context, every piece of news can become a piece of misinformation. Unfortunately, this is how a lot of media outlets operate. So how do we find common ground on important issues? That's where Ground News can help. It's one of the news sources we check. It's a website and app that lets you compare how a single news story is being covered across the political spectrum, easily identify the bias of a media outlet, and see how they're framing an issue compared to other news organizations. Ground News doesn't use your browsing history to manipulate the news you see. They go out of their way to show you articles you might be missing. Their blind spot feature highlights stories that are underreported by both the left and the right, so you don't get trapped in a media bubble. If you want a better understanding of the media ecosystem and what those around you are reading, Ground News is a great place to start. See every side of every news story by going to ground.news/Tom. That's THOM to download the free app. Ground.news/Tom. So, do you have any ideas about how the Democrats can fight back against this? It seems to me like just outing the two Santa Claus theory is like the most important thing, which is why I wrote about it in my op-ed today, and I hope that people share it far and wide. And I hope that it can get through to some of the media, because the media is portraying this as a Biden crisis, not as a political con job, as a political setup. So, question number one, how can the Democrats best deal with this? Question number two, will the death cult end? I mean, this is Kurt Bardella, who used to work for two different Republican lawmakers. He was a senior staffer for both of them. He now is a commentator who regularly pops up on like MSNBC. He noted that the GOP is shrinking, in part because a lot of Republicans are just disgusted with Donald Trump and Trumpism and whatnot. But it's also shrinking because they are literally killing off their own voters. He said this on MSNBC over the weekend. He said, the party is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We have a party that, number one, is giving instructions to their most ardent supporters that will kill them. If you believe this iteration of the Republican Party, it could cost you your life. Your leaders, governors like the one in Mississippi, what we've seen in Alabama, with more deaths in Alabama than actual births last year. If you believe in this party, it could cost you your life. And then he goes on to point out that, number two, if you're a woman, the Republican Party's got nothing for you. They don't believe that you should have control over your own body. And so the party's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And he said, this is what's going to happen to the Republican Party if they keep going down this path. So what happens? I mean, the Republican Party is all in on not getting vaccinated. What happens when there's a vaccine available for younger kids, 5 to 12? That's probably going to happen in the next week or two. And pretty much everybody in the country who is paying attention to the actual news or votes Democratic is vaccinated, and the blue states are doing just fine, thank you very much. In fact, they're starting to open back up. At the same time that red states, Washington State, Washington and Oregon border Idaho, and Washington State is now saying to Idaho, we're not going to take your COVID patients anymore. Sorry, not going to take them. So what happens in America when we've got the red states, people are just dying in droves, and in the blue states, they're getting back to normal? Will the red states figure this out? Will Republicans figure this out? Will they turn on the Republican Party, or are they going to double down on death? I honestly don't know the answer. What do you think? And what happens when large chunks of America start conspicuously dying off and other large chunks of America are just doing fine, thank you very much? I'd say that we're there right now, but it seems like we're just kind of on the edge of there. Tim in Rochester, New York, it says you disagree with me. What do you disagree about, Tim?
When you say that, or there was a comment, I think I heard it correctly, that the people who follow Trump policies are killing people, and I caught the tail end of it. Were you talking about the vaccines, people not taking the vaccines?
Yes, Trump and his buddies spreading skepticism about both vaccines and masks, yes.
Both vaccines and masks. Well, I can imagine. He just held a rally where he encouraged everybody to take vaccines, where there was 100,000 people there.
Yeah.
and they booed him about it.
Nobody's taking him seriously. It's just like when he said, we're opposed to white supremacy.
Didn't mean it when he said
Everybody understands the wink, wink, nod, nod when it comes from Donald Trump. What's your point, Tim?
Now, when President Biden and Kamala Harris were running for president, they stated on national TV that they would not take the vaccine if Trump was involved in it in any way.
No, they didn't say that. Kamala Harris, one of them was asked if Trump was the one who was advocating the vaccine, would they trust that? And they said basically, I don't think I would. I would want the FDA.
He was advocating
I would want
for
the FDA
a life-saving vaccine, but because Donald Trump was involved with it, they wouldn't trust it.
No, what they were saying, and Tim, I suggest you go back and read the original source. It was fairly obvious at the time. The right wing went all hysterical about it. Fox News talked about it for 4 days nonstop. But what they were saying was, if the FDA says this vaccine is good, it's good. If Donald Trump is the only voice saying it's good, I'm not going to trust it. And like I said, that's ancient history, Tim. Thanks a lot. Good try, though. Good try. Andrew in Detroit. Hey, Andrew, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. As far as dealing with the Republicans, months ago you were talking about possibly ending the majority of income tax, other than the necessities that government needs to run, such as military and whatever, and see how the red states survive without income tax coming back from...
You're not talking about ending the income tax. You're talking about ending the redistribution of federal taxes from the federal government, from us in blue states to the red states. The red states are taking $2-3 for every dollar they send to D.C., and blue states are getting like 40, 50, 60, 70 cents for every dollar they send to D.C. Yeah.
Exactly. Let Biden be Santa Claus and take away those things, and then we form a coalition in the blue states, collect up taxes, and we build our roads, we build our schools. Let the red states figure. Look, how would Kentucky make out should that happen?
It's already happening, Andrew. I mean, you've got in Mississippi, you've got higher rates of hookworm and roundworm, and higher rates of maternal and child mortality, women and children dying in childbirth, than in many third world countries. I don't think most, but many third world countries. I mean, we literally have a third world country here in the United States, and it's called the Deep South.
Right. They're not going to listen to anything we're saying. They don't even listen to the media that we listen to. So they're not going to get correct information on any of this.
Yeah, I think you're right. But when you see somebody die on TV, it's an abstraction. When your next door neighbor dies from COVID, it gets real, right? Or somebody that you are friends with on Facebook. So I guess the question is, at what point, what's it going to take for Trump followers and red state governors? We saw Tate Reeves, the governor of Mississippi, over the weekend, just make a total fool of himself on Jake Tapper's show. Defending his unwillingness to allow schools to have mask mandates. At what point do they get it that they are killing themselves? I guess that's my question.
I don't know how much attrition has to happen before that really sinks in with them.
I don't either. I would have thought long before now. But Andrew, thank you for the call. Don in Wheaton, Illinois. Hey, Don, what's up?
Hello?
Hey, Don, you're on the air.
Oh, hi. When you were saying earlier that, the media is following the Republicans' narrative, I don't think we can expect to wake up the media, even though some of the news personalities some of them may be more liberal. The networks and, the networks and the conglomerates like NBC and Comcast will follow the Republican narrative because they don't want any chance of Biden or a future president, Democratic or independent, going in and breaking up the monopolies and going after net neutrality.
And raising their taxes.
Exactly.
Yeah. I get it. Exactly. I mean, the bias that's built into the media, people fail to realize when they're watching, whether it's CNN or MSNBC or ABC, NBC, CBS, that they are watching a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They're watching the news being presented by a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And multi-billion-dollar and most of the people who are presenting the news, by the way, are paid well over $1 million a year. So you've got both presenters and producers are paid quite well, not $1 million a year, but they're typically paid very well into six figures. And so you've got an entire industry that has its own, essentially, axe to grind. And but they're presenting themselves as, oh, we are the guys in the middle. We are the ones who are presenting. So yeah, there is a certain bias there, and that's why I think they're more inclined to buy into the whole two Santa Claus thing. Don, thanks for the call. Scott in Cincinnati, Ohio. Hey, Scott, what's up?
Hey, I like this two Santa Claus theory, but it's a simple solution. We got to get out and vote, and we vote as Democrats, liberals. We outnumber them. We win. And if we do that in the midterm elections, that will scare the crap out of the conservatives of this country. And they will start to really take a hard look at how well Trump is allegedly leading their party off the cliff. It will scare the crap out of them.
I hope so, Scott. The thing is, I mean, you live in Ohio. Your Secretary of State has been deleting massive numbers of mostly black people from the voting rolls in cities like Cincinnati and Cleveland. And the Republican and the Democrats sued over that, saying, "Wait a minute, this is highly racialized, voter purging," and they took it to the Supreme Court, and by a 5-4 right-wing majority, the Supreme Court said it's good with us. So you're going to have a whole lot of people, Democratic voters, who show up to vote in the midterms, next November, who are told when they get there, "Sorry, you're not even registered to vote."
I believe there's a way you can go online in Ohio, and I can't remember the website, where you can verify if you're still registered to vote. I'd have to check what the website is, but you can do that.
There is, and there's a national website, too, that gives you access to that. And I'm sorry, I don't have it right off the top of my head. Every 2 years, we start promoting this website. but the people who are listening to this program are probably not the people who are going to get blindsided. The people who are going to get blindsided are the relatively low information voters, the people who are listening to sports radio or music, the people who only pay attention to politics for the last month of every election cycle, and by then it's way too late to even check your voter registration. In a lot of states.
That's why you got to take friends. That's why you got to take friends. You got to talk it up with your friends. I mean, we're all in our own little tribes, unfortunately, but you gotta talk to your tribe and get them all on the same page. If we do that, we're in good shape.
I am completely with you. Because thank you, Scott. Because the Republican Party, as Kurt Bordella points out, the Republican Party is shrinking. Not only are they killing off their own members, but people who realize that they're killing off their own members are saying, "That's not my party anymore. I'll see you guys later." It's going to be a real interesting election next year. Gordon in Naperville, Illinois. Hey, Gordon, what's up?
The way to beat the two Santa Claus theory is to become the bigger Santa Claus.
I agree.
Beat them at their own game.
And in fact, that's what Joe Biden's trying to do with his $3.5 trillion reconciliation package. But now he's got Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin in the Senate and Kurt Schrader and some of his buddies in the House trying to kneecap him.
Right. Now, one of the ways I think we should do this is through tax cuts. I'd like to propose basically a flat tax, which I know the knee-jerk reaction is, no, that's regressive. But if you tax all income, regardless of source or type, so that includes, stocks, options, whatever, but also include a flat deduction, give everybody the same $100,000 deduction. So now nobody making $100,000 or less pays any taxes. That'd be popular.
Right. Basically, what you're arguing, Gordon, if I may, is, or what it sounds to me, is simply do away with the capital gains designation and carried interest and all these other fancy designations for other kinds of income that people, quote, earn by sitting on their butt around the pool waiting for the check to arrive, and roll all of that into one thing called income tax.
Yes, call it a flat tax, but then give everybody the same deduction. All right, so you eliminate taxes on essentially all of the lower income people. Biggest tax cut in history, right?
Yeah.
But then on top of that, there's a third part here that if you take that deduction and you allow for negative taxes, so let's say you make $50,000 a year, deduct $100,000, you now are going to get taxed on negative 50.
In other words, you get
So
money
you're gonna
back.
get
Those are called
money
tax
back.
credits, and that's, the child tax credit is actually, using your logic, it's being referred to by Democrats as the largest middle-class tax cut in history. And I think if you accept that logic, it is. And they're proposing in their Build Back Better plan, this $3.5 trillion reconciliation package, to make that permanent. It expires at the end of next year.
Well, except what this would do is essentially give the guaranteed minimum income,
Right.
whether you have children or not. If, let's say...
No, I get it. I completely get it.
Let's say the flat tax is 20%. Even if you gave a negative tax rate of half of that,
Sure.
and somebody who makes nothing in a year, somebody who is for some reason unemployable, they're still going to get at least $10,000 a year.
No, I get what you're saying, Gordon, and it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea at all. I'm wary of the phrase flat tax, but it's such a large change, though, in our tax policy. I think the practical reality is that it ain't going to happen. DK in Rapid City, South Dakota. Hey, DK, what's up?
I enjoy you. The boy started listening to you in homeschool years back, and he got me hooked.
Oh, great.
So you were talking about COVID in these red states and what it's going to take, and I live in an extremely rural area, not in Rapid. And it's a lot of it, I think, comes down to just peer pressure, because nobody wants to be attacked for taking precautions or speaking out or whatever, and so most of the time nobody says much anything. I started wearing a mask in March of 2020. I go to town, I wear a mask. If I interact with somebody and it's not outdoors at a fair distance, I wear a mask. If it's somebody I'm uncertain what their attitude is, I will wear a mask even outdoors until I see whether they're, if they attack me for wearing a mask, I'm just going to tell them to get off my property.
Yeah. Are you getting blowback for that in South Dakota? I mean, you've got a governor, Kristi Noem, who is responsible for thousands of deaths. She's
just looking for what her next job's going to be. She wants to be the next vice president or president or whatever, and she's not going to do it. But anyway, no, I haven't gotten, I got a look or two and once in a while, but everybody in the area, we don't go to town much in the first place. And then with this COVID thing, we go to town a lot less. And we have two designated members of the family that I do the local stuff with a mask, and another family member younger than me does the out-of-county stuff with a mask. Just in the last, since we got vaccinated, I started going, I'll go to the next county and go to grocery stores and like that with a mask. Almost nobody's wearing a mask. But, but nobody's complaining about it. A lot of places have disposable masks and hand sanitizer available. Everybody's just trying to keep their head down and not get attacked.
Yeah, on both sides.
From my perspective. But it's like, I'm not going out and socializing. I don't do that much anyway because I like living in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
So, but the other thing with South Dakota is historically we've voted Democratic in the past.
Wasn't George McGovern from South Dakota? Somebody was. Yeah,
McGovern was from South Dakota, and we had was Johnson, and they did a survey after he had that health issue. Like, did they think we ought to kick him out because he wasn't up to doing his job? And my response when the Republican Party polled me was, no, he's been in there a long time. He's been doing just fine. I think we'll just let him stay in there until he decides to leave. And and then after that, I didn't hear diddly squat anymore about trying to get rid of him.
Yeah, interesting.
But we stopped taking Republican polls. But the reason for staying registered Republican in this state is if you want to have a voice, your best chance of a voice is going to be voting in the primary for the candidate that's least bad.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you got any kind of a voice until you get to the actual election.
I wanted to just lay out one last question / argument for you here. This over the weekend, Kyrsten Sinema is saying that, you know, the progressive strategy has been to tie the Republican Democratic collaborative bill that's got lots and lots of goodies for corporate America and tax breaks, all kinds of cool stuff, in addition to rebuilding some of our infrastructure. Basically, it's got about $500 billion worth of new spending over 10 years. So it's a $50 billion a year program. To tie that to the $350 billion a year program, the $3.5 trillion bill, and vote on them both at the same time. And Kyrsten Sinema in the Senate is saying nope. And now Kurt Schrader in the U.S. House, this from Politico.com, Representative Kurt Schrader, one of approximately 10, quote, moderate Democratic House members playing hardball with leadership, said he and several members of their group are on the same page as Kyrsten Sinema and all the Republicans. Some of the lawmakers have conveyed that message up the chain to leadership in the White House. A senior Democratic aide confirmed the warnings. Schrader told Playbook, this is Politico's Playbook piece, if they delay the vote or it goes down, then I think you can kiss reconciliation goodbye. Reconciliation will be dead. Which, of course, is what these, you know, it's what the billionaires want. It's what the Republicans want. They do not want the Democrats to be Santa Claus. They don't want the Democrats to do anything that's going to win them votes. They don't want Joe Biden to have any successes. And so these Democrats are betraying their own party and their own president. From Kurt Schrader to Joe Manchin to Kyrsten Sinema. Why is this? Why are these Democrats betraying President Biden? And why do they continue to advocate for the filibuster, which is a betrayal of democracy? The only thing that I can think of is that they're being paid off. I mean, is there an ideological reason? If you know it, I don't. I've not, you know, I can't see any ideology, any, you know, smart, you know, economic, political, structural, you know, historical, miracle, you know, whatever, any argument for this. Larry in Richmond, Virginia. Hey, Larry, what's up?
Hey, fine, Tom. How's it going?
Good.
Tom, you're that doctor who called about the colonization, how you leave legacy institutions and how those legacy institutions cause the country to develop into a sounder economy. So my question is, Tom, when we had federal troops at the end of the Civil War in the South, why shouldn't we have left those federal troops in the South to leave a legacy institution, and we would not be left with the wealth inequity, the pandemic that's out of control? So
yeah, that's why I asked him, should California colonize Mississippi?
So, but we had a chance. We took the federal troops out of the South.
Yeah, in 1876.
So, and it's still European powers. You had a predominant European northern and a predominant European southern. So you cannot argue that. So, but
right.
How can he explain that? Let's bring the troops back to the South.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that the explanation that white racists lay out, and I'm not saying that Dr. Gilley is one. I'm just saying that his arguments are embraced by them. What they would say is that the South is backwards because that's where 60% of the black population in America lives, and you know, which is just obviously on its face BS, and another demonstration of the virulence, the deadly contagion of racism historically here in the United States, and the kind of damage that it does.
But Tom, we allowed those same leadership of the South to come back to power and negotiated their survival. So really, I think his argument is really not a sound argument.
Yeah.
Because again, had we did what he suggests, we still be in the South now after 100 years occupying the South, and maybe we might have brought the southern part of this country into some kind of civilization. Yeah. I know that sounds very controversial.
No, I get what you're saying, Larry. But I don't think it would have taken 100 years, by the way. The Reconstruction period lasted arguably from 1866 to 1876, or the early 1877, you know, as a consequence of the election of 1876. That was less than a decade. And
less than 10 years with Rutherford v. Hayes. That's correct.
Yeah. So
we did not achieve political equity. We did not achieve political equity.
No, we did not. And that again was being animated by what I would argue is the same worldview that white people should rule and everybody should follow their example. And white people right now, by the way, are killing our planet. Larry, thank you for the call. George in Chicago. Hey, George, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. Excuse me. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
One quick observation about why the treasonous Democrats are betraying Joe Biden. Sounds Machiavellian, but they're not afraid of him. They're more afraid of the conservative outfits that are funding them.
Yeah, it may well be.
But Dr. Gillies, your conversation with Dr. Gilley had my head spinning. Colonial powers left a lot of traditions and institutions in their wake that were not positive. I mean, the British invented the concept of the concentration camp in South Africa during the Boer War, and even continued it in the 1950s when Kenya was revolting against British rule. Mm-hmm. And even though technically it was not a colony, it was a British mandate, they had concentration camps in Palestine/Israel before the Israeli War of Independence. And when it comes to colonial powers, I think he probably ignored Japan. I thought of this when South Korea got mentioned near the end. In 1910, Japan conquered and colonized Korea, did everything they could to wipe out their language and culture. If you wanted to move up in life, you had to become fluent in Japanese. And during World War II, the Japanese drafted young Korean men into their military, and they fought and died all over the Pacific and Southeast Asia. And the colonialist Japanese were only too happy to kidnap over 20,000 Korean women and make them available to their troops as the euphemistically known, quote, comfort women, unquote. Why anybody would want to go back to colonialism in any form just boggles my mind.
Yeah. Well, and as I said, I mean, we look at Afghanistan. We tried our best. We spent arguably $7 trillion. The official number, I think, is $5 trillion. But that doesn't include an awful lot of money that went to contractors and an awful lot of money that just kind of stuck to the fingers of Americans and other corrupt people. So, yeah, spot on, George. I think you nailed it. Jackie in Port Orchard, Washington. Hey, Jackie, thanks for listening to KBCS. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I just want to warn people about signing online petitions and to slow down. Don't do what I did yesterday. Sometimes these petition platforms send out a slew of petitions all in one email. Mm-hmm. And I trusted this particular platform because all their petitions are always worthwhile, progressive and, But in a hurry, I kept pressing sign to get through them all. Mm-hmm. But just after quickly signing a certain petition, I realized what I signed. Protect Medicare Advantage.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I don't know if you want me to say what platform it was.
That's fine.
Online. Okay, CARE2, C-A-R-E, numeral 2.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm not going to sign any of their stuff anymore.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Just a warning. So anyway, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thanks for the heads up on that. Bill in Woodwright, Illinois. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, Tom, I think the Democrats need to reframe their $3.5 trillion over 10 years down to $3.5 billion per year, which is half the defense budget.
$350 billion a year, yeah. Yeah, you're right. And they need to, but for I was going to say for some people, I think it's probably most Americans literally don't understand the difference between $1 billion and $1 trillion. And
but they understand the defense budget.
I don't think so. I think if you were to walk up to 20 people on the street and say, do you have any idea what the defense budget was last year? Was it more than $700 billion? Was it less than $100 billion? Was it more than $3 trillion? They couldn't even do multiple choice. And 350 sounds bigger than 3.5. I'm serious.
I guess, but okay.
So I could be wrong, but my guess is that's probably part of the reason why the Democrats are messaging this as $3.5 trillion over 10 years, rather than $350 billion a year for 10 years is because for a lot of people, 350 sounds bigger than 3.5.
Okay, well, I've been with you since your first day on IE America, so
wow,
I'll take your word for it.
Well, thank you, Bill. Thank you very much. That's 18 years. Wow.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. I appreciate the call, and I might be wrong on this. I think that for among informed, intelligent, thoughtful, informed is the major word there. Voters, they get it that $350 billion is 1/10 of $3.5 trillion, and therefore less money. But I just, H.L. Mencken famously said, "No one ever failed to get rich underestimating the intelligence of the average American," or words to that effect. Maybe underestimating the intelligence of the American electorate. And I think Donald Trump has done his very best to prove H.L. Mencken right. I mean, I got another one today. I mean, just an hour ago, I got an email from Donald Trump saying, "I want you to come to my rally in Georgia, and I'm ready to pay for your airfare, and I'm ready to put you up at a hotel." I would be surprised if, by the way, nobody ever wins, right? But all you have to do to win is just simply make a donation of any amount today. And, of course, the little check boxes are pre-checked that say, "Give me this every month. Oh, and by the way, add $50. They're all pre-checked. It's crazy. The guy is a flim-flam artist, and he's still out there doing it. Dennis in Bayonne, New Jersey. Hey, Dennis, what's on your mind?
I was just recognizing a speech that was supposed to be given on November 22nd by our president.
Jack Kennedy.
Unfortunately, he never made the speech because he was killed on his way to the Trade Mart. He talked about misinformation, how it could handicap the progress of a city or a company, and can, if allowed to prevail in national policy, handicap the nation's security. And I think he kind of predicted what we're going to see now and what we're seeing now.
Kennedy gave another speech that he actually did give, where he was talking about the damage that political lies do in America. It's been a few years since I've seen it, but I know it's floating around on YouTube someplace. I wonder if it's very similar.
I mean, he said we cannot expect that everyone will talk sense to the American people, but we can hope that fewer people will listen to nonsense.
Yeah.
I think those are
He was dealing with
words.
the John Birch Society, which was the precursor to the Tea Party, which was the precursor to Trumpism and QAnon. And, it was a tough time. It was a very tough time.
I think he saw what was coming. Unfortunately, he wasn't around to.
I think so.
It's a shame.
Dennis, thank you for the call. Doug in Fort Collins, Colorado. Hey, Doug, thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's up?
How you doing, Tom? Love your show, and I love your callers even more.
Thank you.
You were in electronics, and I'm also in electronics, and I noticed you have a hard time sometimes grasping numbers. And so I wanted to put something out there. There's almost 333 million Americans. That's a third of a billion. So if every American person gave $3, that's $1 billion.
Oh, that's a nice way to say it.
A trillion is 1,000 billion. So a trillion is $3,000 for every person in America. It gives a way of looking at things like, oh, we spent $1 trillion, everybody's on the hook for $3,000. And it's just a way of putting it in perspective.
Yeah. Thank you, Doug. That's a good one.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that with you.
I will use it. I appreciate it. Elena, am I saying that right, in Seattle?
Yes. Hi, Tom. I wanted to talk. I don't know if anybody called about this today, but the Senate parliamentarian just said that undocumented immigrants cannot be included in the reconciliation bill.
Yeah.
So she basically threw out 8 million people who this would help.
Yeah.
How can we get rid of her? Or
well, first of all, the Democrats
ignore her order, but I think it's better to just replace her with somebody else.
Let's be very clear here, Elaine. What she is ruling on is a provision in the Senate rules. It's not a law. It is not in the Constitution. And as president of the Senate, Kamala Harris has the ability to overrule a parliamentarian. Just simply say, yeah, thank you very much for your advice. See, the parliamentarian's judgment is not determinative. It is, or whatever the word is, it is advisory. So, number one, the Democrats can simply ignore her. They could just choose to do that. And Republicans have done that in the past. Number two, They could do what Trent Lott did in 2001 when the first Bush tax cut was being put into place, and it actually changed some of the categories of kinds of income that would be eligible for huge deductions, so that people who made their money on stocks and whatnot would get a much bigger deduction than people who earned their money from regular income. And the parliamentarian at that time, I'm forgetting, I think his name was Robert Dove, said you can't do that through reconciliation. That requires legislation. And Trent Lott was the leader of the Senate. He was the Senate Majority Leader at the time, and he just fired him. He fired, as I recall, it was Robert Dove. He fired him and replaced him with somebody else who was willing to go along with it. And so Chuck Schumer has the ability to do that. He can simply say, thank you very much, Mrs. McCullough, I think her name is, or something like that, McCullough or McConaughey. He can say, thank you very much for your advice, and we will take it very seriously, but we're going to let you go, and we're going to replace you with somebody who used to work on the Bernie Sanders campaign.
Yeah, so it's basically his decision, right? The whole Senate doesn't have to vote on it, or?
Yes, it is Kamala Harris's decision, and she's a Democrat, whether the Senate is going to take her advice, and it is Chuck Schumer's decision whether she keeps her job. And, Democrats being Democrats, I'm pretty sure both of them are going to wimp the hell out. But, which is very distressing. But that's the situation. Elena, thank you for the call. We'll see, how much and to what extent they may have the courage of their convictions. So would you like to watch the Thom Hartmann program, all 3 hours of our program, anytime you'd like? Patreon.com, patreon.com/Thom Hartmann, THOMHARTMANN, all run together. When you become a supporter of the program through Patreon, you have access to the full 3-hour show anytime you want, and special content that we put up every single week that is unique specifically to our Patreon page. So check it out. Patreon.com/Thom Hartmann. Thank you. So all jokes aside, there actually is a talking duck. Every day, Louise and I, we walk along the Columbia River here, and there's lots of ducks and geese, and we often talk to them. None of them have talked back to us yet, but a Dutch scientist, this from Reuters, has uncovered old recordings of a musk duck. Now, most of what we see are mallards or grebes. Musk duck mimicking the phrase, "You bloody fool!" And he learned it when he was raised by humans in an Australian bird park. This duck is named Ripper. Ten Kate, who published his findings in the Netherlands Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society Biological Research Journal, said, "It's definitely based on the human voice, even though the pronunciation is a bit odd, which might be the Australian accent." Gee, you think? You bloody I can't even do an Australian accent. This duck could also make the noise of the sound of a door closing and a latch clicking. We all know that some kinds of birds can do this sort of thing. Most famously the parrots, right? But ducks, hey, we've got a whole new project now when we're taking our walks. Paul in British Columbia, Canada. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I wanted to discuss with you issues pertaining to the reconciliation bill, and what do you think will ultimately pass in terms of the bill in regards to what will ultimately remain intact? Now, some of the components to the bill obviously consist of Medicare expansion, clean energy standards, universal pre-K, affordable child care, paid family and medical leave. Such an expansion of the public sector really hasn't taken place since about the 1960s with the Great Society programs. And of course, under a sort of Biden leadership who's always sort of strive for bipartisanship, I wonder what will ultimately remain and what will ultimately get taken out. What do you think about that?
If somebody were to put a gun to my head and say, you have to place a bet My bet would be that the so-called $1 trillion, it's actually $500 billion in new money, the so-called $1 trillion bipartisan bill is the only thing that's going to pass and the only thing that will get signed into law. The Republicans are mobilized against this. They have 10 Democratic allies in the House. They have 2 Democratic allies that we know of in the Senate. There may be others against the $3.5 trillion plan over 10 years. And that $1 trillion plan is not anything more than basically just kind of filling in the holes here and there. It's not the kind of, it's not going to address climate change. It's not going to address the crisis of Medicare. It's not going to, it's just so many things it's not going to address. And if that happens, then I suspect that, Schrader and Sinema and Manchin will succeed with their sabotage. I'm hoping they don't. I'm doing everything I can to make sure that, people know what's going on, and to whatever extent they can play the role of activists, they can do something about it. I'm hoping that it won't, but that would be my bet.
Yeah, that's the same sort of unfortunate, cynical, and less optimistic approach I've also taken. But we also got to remember, this is Biden's bill. Most of these policies are policies that Biden advocated for within the context of the early Democratic primary debates. Therefore,
and this is his legacy.
Yeah.
I mean, he needs to sit these people down and say, I'm not going to let you mess with my legacy, with my presidency, with my success, and frankly, with my party. Because what's going to happen is, if you only get the $1 trillion bill passed and the economy continues to sag and the Republicans continue to obstruct him in every regard, and particularly if they can refuse to raise the debt ceiling, if they can get a couple of Democrats to go along with that so they don't raise the debt ceiling and America is on the edge of default. And by the way, we ran out of money in July, right? Janet Yellen has been pulling money out of wherever she can find it to pay for things. But the bill is going to come due very soon. If they can do that, then you are going to see Republican victories in 2022 and 2024. If, on the other hand, Biden can pass his $3.5 trillion bill, Americans can immediately see the positive consequences of that. Yes. We can see, look at how popular LBJ was after that. I mean, the Vietnam War killed him. But had it not been for the Vietnam War, LBJ would be thought of like FDR right now. So, yeah, I think it's absolutely terrible. Paul, thank you for the call. Chuck in Coldwater, Missouri. Hey, Chuck, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Hi, everybody. I love the show. Just wanted to let you know that in 2015, I got Obamacare. 2016, it kicked in on January 1. On February 1, I got diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Oh, my God.
And so I signed on to the lawsuit with
against Roundup?
Monsanto. Yeah, use it for years, 2,4-D as well. And so anyway, they hired the guy that did the 9/11 settlements, and they gave us, everybody who's sick, they gave us all points, right? Mm-hmm. So, I got my points, and I bet it comes out to a pretty good chunk of money, about $150,000. And so I said, okay, that sounds fair. That'll give me some relief. So the attorney took half, or almost half.
Oh, geez.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that the insurance companies could take your settlements. I'm not surprised. I mean, they're insurance companies, after all. These guys are predators. They're leeches on the backs of society. Chuck, thank you for the call. Holy cow. We will have to continue this conversation tomorrow because it's the end of the show. Get out there, get active. There's a lot of work we need to do. Holy cow. And get, $3.5 trillion in reconciliation passed. Get out there, get active, tag, you're it. Be good to yourself and those around you.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.